Hi guys, welcome back. I hope everyone has been fine. So, since our last meeting, so today we are going to look at optimizing medication adherence. Now, we are going to use data from the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme. It's an Australian administrative data. This paper was written um, by authors who are trying to come up with a tool to measure medication adherence. Now, over the past decade or so, we know there have been studies, increasing studies over the years on medication adherence. But now there are two problems here. Number one, there are various healthcare systems that are used globally, and they are not uniform. Number two, every study that has been coming up with methods or tools has not released any open source tool or code, let's say code, behind these tools that can be used for reproducibility purposes, or that if you wanted to implement as a scientist or a researcher yourself, you could refer to. So today we are going to look at not only the tool, or rather the framework, but also we are going to compare it to our own system and see if you were to implement this tool, how would you go about it? So number one, we are going to refer to the framework called the 10 spiders framework, and then map it to our own, which is the Kenya's SHA or SHIF claims system. We could have used the now defunct NHIF, but we are currently using SHA. So walk with me. So why does tracking adherence matter? For example, PV. Looking at these 4 points, we are looking at signal distortion, we're looking at population level view. But one of the most difficult things is to determine medication adherence of our whole population. Now we are going to look at the way the authors used claims data to give a proxy for adherence across the Australian population, for that matter. But now we are just going to look at generally, without niching it down to the Australian population, generally any population, because we want, this is an open source code or tool, right? We are also going to look at the 10 spiders framework, like I've already said, what it means in the first place before you even start implementing it. Now, sometimes a treatment failure or an adverse event signal may just be a patient who stopped refilling their prescription. Population level view claims data gives a proxy for adherence across all enrolled populations and not just trial volunteers. So PV teams can watch real world behavior continuously and collect real world evidence at WE. So on to the next slide, we are looking at the method that was used is proportion of days covered, what we call PDC, or rather the approach. What's PDC? You take the days a patient has medicine on hand, you divide that by the days in the observation period, or the days that you think they took this medication. Not that you think, rather, that is true. Then the usual cutoff point is usually 80%. Below that, then they are non-adherent. Above that, or at least 80%, they are adherent. So we have the reproducibility problem, like we have already said, where we looked at, there was a scoping review done in 2022, took 76 cardiovascular studies, then found that PDC calculated many different ways on the same kind of data. So there was a variance in parameterization, but we look at that and how we can take care of it. Almost a third of the studies did not even report how they handled death, hospital stays, or medication changes. You see, this is the problem about the parameterization problem that I was talking about. So the results really become almost impossible to reproduce. So what is 10 spiders? We look at the threshold, which is the cutoff point, that is 80%. The eligibility, in that who and which dispensings are included in the PDC approach. The numerator, when follow-up starts, discharge or fast fill, which one would you pick? Then survival, truncate the period at date of death. Sorry, pre-supply in hospital. Pre-supply just means you count the medicine that is already on hand at entry. Then in hospital, you adjust for the days spent as an inpatient. Then dosing, where you have a day's supply per fill, or you can even impute it. For example, is it TDS? Is it BD? Is it OD? Then we have early refills, and then we have switching, handling a change of drug within the same class. Now, this paper looked at statins and P2Y12 inhibitors. These are the likes of clopidogrel and the platelets, really. But we look at that in the next slides. So they used 3 data sets. First one was at the person level, who is in the study. So we have person ID, or rather the unique ID of the patient, the admission date, the discharge date, and the death date. Then what was dispensed? The ATC code, which is the drug code, the anatomical what classification, I'm forgetting. And then the item code, the supply date, and then the days supplied. We have the third, the admissions now, the episode level. This kind of optional, but for accuracy, yeah, we'll see. In fact, we'll see how some of these, when you add some of these parameters, how they affect the whole result, and if you don't add them, how they also affect the computational time. So you have the admission and discharge dates for readmissions during follow-up. So inpatient days can be handled. Okay, so we are looking at the Kenyan equivalence of each data set. If you were a Kenyan watching this video and you wanted to implement it, how would you go about it? So let's compare the Australian and the Kenyan equivalent. We have the pharmaceutical benefit scheme dispensing claims, which is the SHA for us. We have Taifa Care. I don't know how many hospitals have really rolled it out, but the last time I checked, it's still being rolled out. So we have the ICD-10, which is also the same ones we are using, the ICD-10 code, which is the same we are using in our SHA claims forms. Then we have the National Death Index. As for us, that's our civil registration services reports, rather. That's where our deaths are registered. The problem is, I don't know if it's linked with our SHA, and I don't know how many. Anyway, we'll come to look at that. Then we have the person linkage identifier, which is the sort of the unique ID of the person. For us, it would be the national ID, which is what we use when we are registering SHA, or the SHA beneficiary number. Same thing, really. We have the VAED hospital episodes. For us, that will be the KHIS. Of course, it will be a better source, but it's an aggregate. We cannot get it at the patient level. Okay. So what would have sufficed for this case will be the facility HMIS, which is now Taifa Care in our case, okay, for episode level data, looking at, okay, when were they admitted, when were they discharged, each individual patient. So like I said, they used statins and P2Y12 inhibitors, and it was just MI patients, okay? So the study followed survivors of MI, myocardial infarction rather, and tracked 2 secondary prevention drug classes. Both are, of course, on our list, and we use both. So the Kenyan question this could answer is that of the SHIF covered or the SHA covered MI survivors, how many of them are on statin and antiplatelets would stay on that medication for a whole year, even after discharge, okay? So let's look at how the tool is built. We have looked at the 10 standardises framework. We have looked at what it means. Now we are going to build the tool. We have already compared it to our system. We have looked at the weaknesses where it won't necessarily match with this paper, but there is always room for innovation. That is where you should come in as a researcher now. How do you take care of such problems? Now we are looking at how to build it. Okay. So a single starter file, I wish I could project that, but yeah, maybe I'll attach the link to this video or not. You can just shoot us a DM and we'll provide you everything else. There's a way I would have shown you how to set the 10 parameters, but maybe in another video we'll do it together. Then these are the 5 steps. So number 1, you set the parameters. You use the 10 spiders parameters that we already saw. Then you clean and merge. Then you build the window, which is start and end date. Then you can truncate at death, of course, if you have switched on your survival parameter. So once the patient dies, that's the end of it. Then compute coverage, that is, you mark each day 0 or 1 for supply on hand, and you apply pre-supply. You take care of switching medication. For example, they want starting, then they switch to another, or vice versa. You take care of early refills, and then, of course, dosage imputation. How many tablets are they taking in a day? Is it OD, is it BD? Is it, yeah, whatever. Then the output, that is the proportion of days covered, right? You divide the covered days by the period so that you can find the threshold. Remember, our threshold is 80%. Now, the good thing is, I said, the code that was used to publish this paper is open source. So remember, one of the problems or the core problem that this paper was trying to solve is there are many methods that have been written on in literature over the years, but there is no reproducible tool or code for these tools. That's one of the things that this paper was trying to solve. And the code is available. It's on GitHub. We can paste the link on this video. So let's look at you, or rather them, the researchers have built the tool. Now, is the computational speed affected? Okay. So we find that adding hospital admissions data meaningfully increases compute time. So this is something maybe you want to take care of even as you build your starter tool. Or they did build this tool using starter. So they did mention that. Then the whole analysis ran on a virtual machine with 16 GB RAM. No specialist computing needed, so it's realistic for anybody, really. Even you could just take it and use it. So they ran on 648,000 starting fields and 403,000 P2Y12 fields. So only the full in-hospital adjustment roughly doubles the time needed, and you could see the Medavia tool. This is an existing tool that they were trying to compare it with. Okay. Then now you have the basic, where the framework is just stripped off. Everything is just very basic. It doesn't have these additional parameters. Then what happens when you add these additional parameters, such as survival? You take care of switching medication. You take care of pre-supply, dose imputation, and in hospital admissions data. You can see what happens from basic to in hospital, and this is in seconds. So there's a meta, it's an existing starter package, okay? That's why I said they were trying to compare the 10 spiders framework versus the Medavia package. On much basic settings, the two agree. You can see the Pearson correlation. The Pearson R 0.99 for P2Y12 inhibitors and 0.97 for statins. If I were to round off, anyway. So the gap opens only as you add adjustments made at the. So for those who don't know what Pearson's correlation is, It's a measurement that is used to measure correlation between two continuous variables and the strength and direction of the association of these two variables. Okay, so it ranges from -1 to +1, where -1 you have a perfectly negative correlation between the two, and then +1 is a perfectly positive correlation, and 0, of course, the correlation does not exist. The formula is you just take the covariance of the two variables that you're measuring, then you divide by the product of their standard deviations. Okay, so that's another whole statistics lesson anyway. We can see from our slide that is the main difference when compared between the 10 spiders and the meta package. The meta package is also it's open source as well, but you can see that the disadvantages is it does not take care of survival truncation. Survival truncation simply means even when the patient dies, okay, the calculation is it extends all the way. We don't stop at the patient's death. So if you really look at it keenly, that's a problem. Then we have no pre-supply. There is no adjustment for in hospital what admissions. There's no within class switching logic where it's the same class of drug but we switched. How does that affect our results? Medicare package does not take care of that. So I'd say here the 10 spiders, of course, wins. Even from our takeaway, you can see that the more the estimates diverge because of real world complexity, and you end up with a 10 spiders framework really performing better, or rather giving you more accurate results because of all these variables that it does take care of. So we have already talked about that. The best practice, of course, when you're building this tool is you declare every 10 spiders parameter you used. We looked at the framework, we looked at the parameters. If it doesn't hurt, we can always go back and look at them again once more. So in the Kenyan setting, like we have said, with SHA claims now flowing through the Taifa Care, I think a few hospitals, public hospitals, have rolled out Taifa Care, and maybe a year or two from now, we can build these if the data will be open source. That is, as for now, I'm not so sure we can apply this unless you get some good funding and you collect data manually, which is quite a tedious task. So we can track statin and antiplatelet adherence in myocardial infarction survivors covered by SHIF, which is the exact use case in the paper. For national PV, we can feed adherence context into PPB signal review, the PVAS system, so that treatment failures are not confused with unfilled prescriptions. You know, sometimes, and we have seen this oftentimes for those of us in the hospital practice, where your patient does not finish their dosage, especially with antibiotics. This is rather common, but I digress. Um, you could extend this playbook or rather framework to other chronic disease programs such as diabetes, TB, especially TB. TB is very notorious for non-adherence, right? And any class really where SHIF reimbursed refills are recorded. So that means you also have to at least have the domain or background, not domain, background knowledge of um, the drugs covered under SHIF, PHC, whatever, what have you. And then the health financing insight gives SHA a reproducible adherence metric to link spending to real medicine uptake and outcomes. Now that's on the regulator side. Okay, so let's look at why we cannot apply this, or if we want to try to apply it, what are some of the obstacles we'd meet? A dispensed drug may not be taken. The claims just show fills and not ingestion per se. You cannot tell doctor-led stopping from patient self-cessation. There is no clear difference. Okay. Maybe the doctor stopped this drug and maybe switched them to another one. We cannot tell that from claims data. Of course, it's validated only in the Australian cardiovascular data so far. It needs long form data and strict naming conventions. I wish I would have attached the starter parameters, how they are captured in the starter software here. You'd see what this point means. But we could always attach the link to the paper to this video. So specifically to Kenya, our civil registration, it's in Intatas. I don't know about that. So survival truncation may be hard. The KHIS system that we use to report, it's aggregate. It cannot, we cannot trim it down to subject level or rather patient level. The SHA claims history is short. Of course, SHA was, it came the other day. That's why I said maybe in the next 1 year or 2 years, maybe we could have a story. We could have something good. Cross-system person linkage keys are still maturing. Okay. Community versus hospital dispensing split differs from the Australia's model. What does this mean exactly? It means if you were to recruit patients, I'd say strictly stick to the patients who only refill their prescriptions in the hospital. Because if you look at our system, the system that maybe the community pharmacies use and of course the public or hospitals use is different. That goes without saying. So yeah, you'd that's a point where you'd want to be careful about when you're recruiting your subjects for the study. So these are a rough pathway of building these in Kenyan hospitals, rather pragmatic. Um, Under governance and data, you have to have at least the approval, okay, that you're going to handle this data. Thank God, if your data we are ODPC approved, there I say, so you, that's something you'll have to at least check first. Assemble the three data sets that we looked at, okay? Extract the cohort, the dispensing, and admissions data from Taifa Care or the HMIS that we'll be using. Then confirm that ICD-10 coding was followed and have a stable person linkage key. Then adapt the code. The code is open source, okay? It's from GitHub. Adapt it. Remap variable names to match the SHA fields, the ones that are used by SHA. Try to match them to the PBS. Then pilot and validate. Of course, we could start with one class, then expand to another and another and another and another. Start with maybe if it's MI, if it's diabetes, just start with one class of drug used in that condition or disease, right? I hope that was clear. So same. These are some of the minimum requirements checklists, and we have already covered it. We have talked about person level cohort, a unique patient ID, admissions date, discharge date, and the death date. I'm sorry, for survival truncation. A stable unique identifier to link the data sets, long form data and consistent variable naming, dispensing records where you have the drug code. You could use to go with the TC code. I'd advise on that and recommend. Starter, of course, you have to at least know how to even use it. Admissions data only if you're modeling in hospital days, okay? As for starter, it's straightforward. Maybe we'll do a video on the same if we get a demand. So yeah, that was it. Thank you so much for attending or listening to this video, watching this video, kindly like, share, and subscribe. Comment, ask questions. We'll reply for sure. If there's anything you'd want us to maybe dig deeper on the same video, kindly comment on the same, and I'll ensure that maybe we attach the link to the paper down at the description below, and GitHub or not, because the GitHub link is still in the paper. Thank you so much for attending. Hope to see you again next time.